Okay, welcome everybody to the 501c cast. It's an interesting time in April 2020, and one thing that nonprofits are facing is the prospect of rescheduling or canceling their annual events and board meetings. So we brought with us today our experts from Prestige, and they have been our sourcing agents since 2006, serving all our different clients. And today we're going to talk with them about venue cancellation and rebooking, answer some common questions we've been getting around how that process works, how you can move forward, come out through it in the best possible shape while still preserving your relationship with the hotel. And we're going to talk about smart contracting, solutions for cancellation and rebooking, decision-making for timeline cancellation, and then understanding the current hospitality market. So we have with us Katie Yarby and James St. Peter, both with Prestige, both who've been working with us. Particularly Katie is very familiar with most of our nonprofit resources clients. They're going to be your experts today tackling these questions, and I'll turn it over to them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is smart contracting, and we'll go one question at a time here, and we'll have James start us out. So can I postpone an event if that option isn't stated in my contract?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for the introduction. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this topic. Obviously, it's something we've been focused on for the past couple months now, given the fact of everything happening in our world. So the question, can I postpone an event if that option isn't stated in my contract, is going to be dependent on a few different factors. Number one, do you have a good relationship with the hotel? Is the hotel have an appetite to look at rebooking this program? Because depending on what else the contract says, the client might have the option or the right to invoke the force majeure or impossibility clause in the contract, allowing them to be released from any obligation in the contract, just outright, no penalties. So that it would depend. We've seen some hotels open to postponing, even if the contract doesn't specifically state. Usually it's called the rebooking clause, and it allows the client to cancel, and then the hotel would use some of those damages that they would collect towards another program into the future, and they can, discuss with the hotel the timeline by which that second event takes place. But I would say that, it's the answer, and most of the answers when it comes to contracting, which is why there's so many attorneys, it's always, it depends, or yes and no, dependent on certain situations. So in this situation, I would say absolutely ask the hotel what options you have to postpone the program given the circumstances, and start that conversation with the hotel.
To add to that, I would say, given the current climate as well, hotels would much rather postpone and focus on a rebooking than an outright cancellation. That keeps money in everybody's pocket, keeps the hotels running. And so I would pursue the conversation starting with, we want to look at a rebooking versus an outright cancellation.
Katie, can you fill us in on what's happening with postponements? Like, is there a guideline on how far out a hotel will go? Are they wanting to stay within this calendar year, or can they push back to 2021? What's happening?
Again, so things are changing rapidly and daily. 3 weeks ago, hotels were very adamant about keeping the business in 2020. So moving May programs to November and December. We are now starting to see some hotels bend on that and allowing for movement into next year. Again, it's very situational and it'll continue to change, but I really think that, again, it's just starting those conversations, and the hotels would rather talk rebooking and starting there, and then decide on the timeline.
Yeah, that's spot on. I think hotels, they analyze their budgets annually, and if they're anticipating revenue for 2020 that is now canceled for, say, a May program, their first intention is to get it back this year. But as Katie mentioned, at this point, I think hotels are open to the conversation of rebooking at any point. If it is this year, they're ever more grateful for it. And one of the ways you could have the conversation is, if we rebook into this year, will you allow us to have more flexible attrition terms as it relates to the contract in case we still lose attendance because people are still not traveling, or there still might be some hesitations to traveling. So there's a little bit of give and take from that perspective. If you're willing to try to book into this year, ask for some additional concessions to help protect you and limit your liability. Or if you're just saying this year's not going to work because we always hold our conference in the spring or the summer, then have a conversation about rebooking it to a future year. Because like Katie said, a program is better than no program, even if it's at a future year.
Great, thank you. So related to rebooking and rescheduling, if somebody has gotten into a contract without the valuable assistance of an agent, what do they do if all of a sudden now they meet you and they want to work with you in the future but want you to be involved in an existing contract to help them get out of this mess? Can they use an agent to reschedule their event if you weren't involved in the original contract?
Go ahead, Katie.
No, go ahead, Jimmy. I'll add to it.
Yeah, I would say yes. We have been involved in some contracts that either a different agent worked on that the company no longer works with, or a company is still just looking for some guidance, because this is what we do all day. We do roughly 1,600 contracts a year. So we're kind of always involved in a contract, always reviewing contracts, always negotiating with hotels for good and bad, right? And this is part of one of the bad and unfortunate situations that we're having to have conversations, but we're absolutely willing and always, able to help when we can. And it's just helping, guide the conversation. We're not there to offer legal advice. We're not there to, have a magic wand and make all the problems disappear. But because we do this on a regular basis, and because we have some of the relational chips at hotels, whether it be at the hotel property level or with like a brand global sales office or national sales office, we do want to try to help, and that's, so I would say, yes, we can be involved to help navigate the waters if that's something that people are looking for.
Yes, and to add to that, I would say most hotels are familiar with the agency world. I would be shocked to find a hotel that wasn't. And so they're familiar with how we work. With our company in particular, we're very well connected within the industry, with many most independent properties, and for sure the large brands. So those hotels are familiar with us being a part of the conversation. And certainly nobody should ever not be able to talk to somebody like us as experts in our field as a resource. And so I would never shy away from at least having the conversations with us or an agent to help navigate the waters, like Jimmy said.
Great, thank you. So our second topic here is finding solutions that work for everyone. Knowing that you want to preserve the hotel relationship, you're going to potentially have an event there later. You don't want to be unfair. At the same time, sometimes a nonprofit is losing the biggest chunk of their annual revenue, maybe with a fundraising event or an annual conference that is 50% of their revenue for the year, and they're feeling very bad. First of all, to have to postpone or cancel. Second of all, just the financial toll of a cancellation fee on top of their lost revenue. So we'd like to hear how groups can get through this intact with ideally a decent relationship with the hotel and or the agency. So the first question here is, I've heard a few times, well, the hotel can just, good luck trying to get a cancellation fee out of us when we've lost all our annual revenue and we have hardly anything to begin with. What are they going to do? Get blood from a turnip? And, you know, I understand why someone would say that. You know, and especially if you're looking, if you're a small nonprofit or even a large nonprofit, a huge hit to your budget, you've already laid people off, maybe. What are the hotels going to do and how enforceable are these contracts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I mean, how much money do people want to spend litigating a hotel contract depending upon its worth, right? So, I mean, in this situation, without offering any sort of legal advice, you know, would a hotel come after a group for cancellation fees? Maybe. I guess it depends how much the cancellation fees would be. Are they in the right to do so based on the contract that was signed? Again, depending on the terms and conditions, I would say yes, they are. But, you know, I don't know if that's the best, you know, way to go about a conversation, just telling someone we're not going to pay you. It's, we don't have the funds to pay you right now. How can we make this right, you know, between the organization and the hotel? And again, looking for the win-win, because, you know, money's tight for companies, nonprofits, all different types of organizations, and money's also tight for hotels right now as well. So I think everyone's trying to look to see how they can reserve cash, but then also if they're owed cash, how can they collect it? And so we've been trying to find creative solutions, you know, whether that's like, if you hold on to our deposits that we gave you for a 2020 program, and you're going to keep it for 2 years, you know, and you're going to accrue interest on it, is there a concession that we can get that is of value to that rather than giving us that money back? But in this situation, if there's a cancellation fee, you know, maybe negotiating or using an agent or an agency to help negotiate the cancellation fees that were agreed upon in the contract, maybe to negotiate those down some. Again, that's something that can happen. And hotels think of it as maybe this is something's better than nothing, but it is all dependent again on the situation, which hotel you're working with, how large the program is, the value of the contract. There's a number of factors that would go into play. And then going in with the attitude and mentality of, how can I create a win-win here for my organization, but also the hotel, so we can work together into the future. So.
Great, thank you. Katie, anything to add on that?
No, I think Jimmy hit spot on that one.
Great, thank you. So our third topic of discussion here is the timeline. You know, when to pull the trigger on postponing or canceling, when to act and when to wait. We're hearing from a lot of nonprofits, you know, I mean, everybody's anxious to know what's going to happen in a time when nobody knows what's going to happen. So trying to create certainty, trying to, you know, get your PR and marketing around your event, when to pull the plug. We have a couple questions on that. So in some cases, we're hearing that people can't even get in touch with, you know, their Andre, the contact they've been talking to for 2 years, all of a sudden is unavailable and nobody will call them back. And the hotel, whoever they do get a hold of, is saying, well, just wait a few months and ask us again in another 30 days. And then this person has to go back to the board and say, we don't know. And the board says, well, find out. And the hotel says, wait another 30 days. As you see your cancellation clause ticking closer and closer to that, you know, 10% at a time, getting higher and higher if you do wait. So what should I do when the hotel says, just please be patient with us?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is another conversation piece that, you know, I think either doing on your own or working with an agency. And one thing I'll add, going back to the last question is, when you're having those discussions and about cancellation fees, and you might be a program that goes to that hotel one time and you're never going to go back there. So, preserving a relationship to the hotel might not be as important, and preserving the relationship from the client's perspective might also not be as important. But when an agency is involved, when Prestige is involved, and one of our core values as a company is relationships matter on both the supplier and the client side, we will do our best to make sure that everyone feels good about what happens, because they know no matter what happens with that one client we're working with and representing on that transaction, they're going to see us again from some other level or capacity. And so we want to make sure we have a good working relationship with them. And we do think that we have, some chips in the marketplace that allow us to, I don't want to say, bend the rules, but at least have the conversations of, we know the contract says X, but we're really looking to get to Y because it's going to be better and more beneficial for both parties. So I just wanted to say that before we jump in here. But, this is a great question, because if a hotel is asking you to wait to decide whether or not you're going to cancel, I would ask the hotel then to essentially in writing confirm that they will not seek a higher tier of cancellation damages if they are asking you to wait, right? And sometimes it's strategic to wait, right? In this current situation with coronavirus, waiting to see what's going to happen from different government organizations like CDC, World Health Organization, and even local and state regulations as far as, stay in place orders and that kind of thing. It might be beneficial to wait and see, depending on what tier of cancellation you're in at that point. But if a hotel is asking you to wait till you get closer to the event, and then you risk moving into that higher tier, I would ask the hotel to provide in writing that they are not going to seek the higher tier of cancellation damages if you wait to abide by their timeline, if you do so.
And Jimmy, in addition to that, I had a win just this morning relating to the deposit schedule. And so my client is asked, the deposit is actually more of the concern at this point, because their cancellation tier their next cancellation tier isn't until June. And so they've asked, I've asked the hotel if they would push their next deposit instead of being end of April to end of June. And so the hotel was willing to do that. So again, it's just kind of finding that balance of what works for the hotel and what the client can give. So to make that win-win, and in this case, it was moving the next deposit due out a little further, so the client can decide now, has the ability to decide now until June. And
Nice.
And that gives us a little bit more wiggle room to see what the fall is going to bring. This is a fall program. So instead of having to make their decision by the end of April, they've now been given that grace until the end of June.
Excellent.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's something that in all the scenarios I've looked at, I had not thought about asking the hotel when they're asking us to wait, that we ask them to change the terms of the cancellation clause. So thank you.
Yes, and in writing.
Yeah, obviously.
Yes.
So
Definitely get it in writing.
yeah, right. Just as a side note there, does an email count as getting it in writing?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could do it in an email if you want. You could do it and modify the cancellation clause with an addendum to the contract. It really depends on, what you would like, or that the organization feels most comfortable with. Again, if an organization has a legal counsel or outside legal counsel, he or she might dictate what they prefer as far as writing from the hotel. So I would just always make sure, though, it's not just a conversation. If you have a conversation with the hotel, ask the sales manager or director of sales, whomever you're speaking with, that they provide the confirmation in writing to you, whichever email, addendum, whatever you think is the most appropriate.
Great, thank you. So what will encourage the hotel to allow for postponement or cancellation?
Well, I think, again, we've said this a lot, but finding win-win solutions, right? So hotels want to have business, right? Whether it be in this year or next year or any future year. And I think letting the hotel know the scenario that the organization is in, whether it be, we have a lot of older attendees, and so postponing this till the fall might not reassure them that it's still a safe time to travel. So being open and honest with the hotel, and really encouraging them to say, if we postpone, we're going to have better attendance, or if we postpone, like, this is going to be better for both groups, because we're going to have better attendance registration fees, and you're going to have more room nights. So I think just finding that storyline that you can share with the hotel, to help get them on board with the postponement, because given the current climate, like, we've had a lot of clients say, well, I just want to cancel my program due to force majeure, and they have every right to do that. Our job is, if you knew you liked the hotel, right? You knew this was going to be a good fit for your audience. So is there an open year that would work to move this to, rather than just an outright cancellation? And then work with the hotel to find that solution, rather than just an outright cancellation. That's what we've been trying to guide our clients to. If it doesn't work, or if the client wants to cancel, then by all means, we will have that conversation with the hotel. But I think really looking for ways to, find a solution that works for both parties is always what our end goal is.
Great, thank you. Our last topic here is to cover briefly the current market conditions, how the average person can understand what's happening with hotels, and then also the aspects of city, state, and national travel restrictions. What's going on there?
Well, it's unfortunate that right now, our industry, and most industries for that matter, have kind of come to a standstill. There's been a number of hotel sales teams, not just on the selling side, but operations as well, who have been laid off or furloughed from hotels because they don't have the occupancy rates to help generate cash flow to staff them. And so as a result, we've had a lot of contacts at hotels who have been furloughed, and they've reached out to us and let us know, here's my backup, or they have an out of office up. If we've had trouble getting a hold of someone at the hotel, there still are people working at a hotel, and it's just a matter of doing some digging. If any of your colleagues, Kristen, or members, or anyone who hears this podcast is having trouble, please feel free to reach out to us. And this is no obligation on you to ever work with us, but it's more of just like we want to help. We're willing to help find that contact for you, because there are people still working, whether it's a director of sales or a director of sales and marketing, who are fielding all of the sales inquiries at this point. We'll find that person and get you in touch with them, just so you can get your questions answered. But yeah, it's really unfortunate, and I think everybody's looking at their bottom line, and they're trying to figure out, when does the light switch start to turn on, because right now it's shut off. And I don't think it's a light switch on, light switch off situation. I think it's more of a dimmer, to use that analogy, where it's going to come on and it's going to get brighter, and it might get a little darker again, and then kind of slowly pick back up. But I think this is going to be something we kind of ease back into in the hospitality space, and sales teams will be brought back as needed. And most likely they'll get brought back, especially when the RFP generation starts to pick up again, because right now, like I said, things seem to be at a little bit of a standstill. People are waiting to see what happens with some of the stay-at-home orders. What's the CDC going to recommend as far as travel goes, and other business, type of loans, cash stimulus for the economy. So there's just a lot of factors right now that have been discussed. Some of them have been passed, but it's a little bit of a wait and see game, which I think is okay right now. But it's unfortunate that that means we just kind of have to wait. And, you know, as we sit in our boat trying to navigate the water, we're trying to see which way is the wind blowing, and then we'll go that way once we kind of get wind of it. So, Katie, do you have any additional insight?
No, I mean, I think you got to stay persistent and don't, stay on the hotels if you're really having a hard time connecting with somebody. I think Jimmy's point about reaching out to an agency, we would love to help you guys or to help anybody, even if we weren't involved, to try and help navigate that. But this morning I picked up the phone and was trying to get a hold of somebody. I ended up talking to the GM of a small hotel in outside of Toronto. And he said, all right, I'm the GM. I don't take good notes, but let me take your phone number and I'll connect you to somebody. I mean, so there's GMs who are answering phones right now. It's definitely an interesting time. Everybody, with it being an interesting time, everybody has a little bit more compassion. And unfortunately, I think it's unfortunate that we're in this place for people to have that compassion, but I think people are understanding of that this is just uncharted times. And so you got to be persistent, and everybody wants to help if they can, but to just stay on the hotels and find that right person and get what you need to get the answers done.
Right. One of the things I've noticed is that just speaking of city, state, and national travel, is that the consideration for some of our groups is not so much is it going to be safe to travel or is it going to be allowed to travel, but the economic impact of their own businesses is going to prohibit them from doing anything other than like buy groceries and pay their electric bill, maybe. So we're seeing sort of a second wave of non-virus cause, but more economic cause for people to restrict travel just because they're, so we're sort of seeing organizations consider that, not just the safety of travel, but the logistical ability for them to even do so through the rest of the year. So I wanted to thank you for answering all those questions, and I would encourage anyone who has got additional questions or a really super sticky situation to get in touch with us at Nonprofit Resources or get in touch with Prestige, of course. But I wanted to go over briefly what an agent even is, what an agency does, and then if you could address a couple of the really common questions we get on the cost, the benefit, and how does this work? It seems too good to be true. Why is it not?
Yeah, those are all great questions. So to address the first one, what does an agent cost? When you're working with a company like Prestige from a sourcing standpoint, and that means coming to us, asking us, hey, I want to have a meeting in this city, and here's my parameters, help me find a location to host this program. We would then in turn go out and look for properties that could fit your needs and budget, work with the hotels, help negotiate the contracts, kind of be there from the beginning of the process all the way through the end of the program. If you've had issues, getting a hold of your convention service manager, if there's an issue with the final bill, we're there to kind of help, navigate those issues. That doesn't cost anything. In addition to sourcing, though, Prestige does offer event services where we can have people on site. We can do air ticketing. Those are more of like a fee-based service, and those are all dependent on what the program needs. But to work in this capacity as far as hotel sourcing and contracting, those services do not cost any of the clients that we work with anything. Oh, I think you're on mute, Kristen.
Sorry about that. You could tell I was asking a question, right? So if there's no cost to the nonprofit, then how do you get paid? 'Cause you're not doing this out of the goodness of your heart, right?
No.
No, I mean, I do like to think we do it because we love it, and I do love my job, and I love helping clients get something that's going to work for their program, and helping them work through the process. But we are paid through the hotels. So think of us as an outsourced distribution channel for the hotel, just like they have their online system for booking reservations. They have Expedia, they have a lot of different channels that people can book a room night. For group business, they have their sales department, and then they have outside agencies like Prestige Global Meeting Source that bring business to them. And rather than paying us, a fee, or like a marketing fee, to have them be on a roster of hotels for us, we're paid based on production, and we're paid based on room revenue generated from the program. So the added cost to the client is not something that they're going to see in their bottom line. It's something that hotels factor into their cost modeling when they're looking at how much business do we get from third parties on an annual basis. What are our costs associated with putting a guest room into marketplace? What is our seasonality? What's our demand? What's our leisure business look like? And those are all many things and others that I didn't mention that factor into a room rate when they're looking at what it's going to cost when it goes into a contract or goes into an RFP and offered to a client to consider for their program. So we are paid. Obviously, we have to make a living. We have bills to pay. We want to eat and pay our electric bills as well. So, but we are paid through the hotel. So you'll never receive an invoice from Prestige or any agency for, well, I shouldn't say any agency. I don't know what all agencies' cost modeling is, but companies like ours, you won't see an invoice for the hotel sourcing and contracting portion of our services.
Great. So there is no catch. In other words, this is just part of the business model of the hotels to have you working as an intermediary between the group and the hotel, almost like an extension of their own sales staff in a way.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a great way to put it, Kristen. And, some hotels, I always ask the question because I'm interested. I've had a hotel tell me that 90% of their business comes through third parties. And, our business is the hospitality industry. It's a large industry, but it's small enough that if there was a catch, people would know and it would spread too fast that companies like ours wouldn't exist. Thankfully, we've been in business for 34 years and we've worked with 375 clients who trust us to be their sourcing agent and advocate in the marketplace. But at the end of the day, like you said, there really isn't a catch. It sounds too good to be true because it is too good to be true. And so we do have the honor of working with, a number of great clients that, value what we do. And I always tell people, think of working with a company like ours as an insurance policy, right? Where I pay my insurance every month, but I don't get behind my car to drive around like I want to get in an accident. Where you're working with a company like ours, we're being paid through the hotel for our services, but we're there to advocate for you when something goes wrong. And like in the situations we're in now, that's all I've done for the past month, not just for clients I work with, but for all of the other 40 salespeople that are in our organization, working with them and their clients to navigate these uncharted waters, because none of us have been in this situation before. And hotels, we've gotten some pushback, others, understand, but it's kind of just having that conversation and doing it over and over and over again to making, getting what the client needs and wants in every situation. That's really our goal, is whatever our clients need, that's our need as well.
I think in addition to that, the benefit of the agency is, especially during this time, but then also in the good times, the hotels do look at us as an extension of their sales forces, and brands look at us as that. we are having in-office presentations. We're learning about new properties. We're engaging with hotels where our sales team is out citing properties on a regular basis and then sharing that information within our own company. So we're building knowledge of hotels across the world. And we can share that information with our clients where, you know, a nonprofit in particular may not have the budget to get out there and learn about all these different properties. That's where we can be their advocate and present them different options with confidence that, that they can help make those decisions on the front end of their program on sourcing and contracting. And then in times like this, again, us having that network, we are not just a company out there, we are known within the industry, and the hotels want to preserve that relationship with us as well. So just another addition to the benefit of working with an agency and Prestige in particular.
Yep, that's a great point. I mean, we really try to be unbiased when we're looking at hotels with our clients, because if you're working with a hotel, of course, their hotel is the best ever, and their website looks amazing because their pictures are meant to look amazing. Our job is to help you say, we've had programs there, they do a phenomenal job, their food and beverage is amazing, or we had some clients that had service issues there, you know, just so you know, we want to help you get set up for success. And like Katie mentioned, we're constantly communicating with each other because we're kind of the sweet size between size and volume, where we have a good size company of about 40, 45 salespeople out working with their clients, but then also collaborating with the team behind the scenes, sharing information, good and bad, again, because we're trying to make sure we give our clients relevant information that's going to help them. But then also, you know, from a volume perspective, you know, we contract 1,600 programs a year, which is roughly $125 million in room revenue. So there's kind of that sweet spot between, like, we work with each other, but, you know, we have the respect in the ear of all the hotel brands because of that volume, which I think is important, especially when we're working with, you know, new clients every day.
Right, thank you. One thing I've really appreciated in our relationship between our two companies is that there seems to be no discrimination between, you know, a decent sized contract and a little tiny board meeting. And not that you can work on tiny events all the time and you know, make your bread and butter, but I have never seen Katie turn up her nose at a piece of business that might be too small or seem insignificant. And that's something we've really appreciated. So I want to just close by thanking the two of you for taking time to be on the 501 cast, and encourage anyone that's got questions to email us or email Prestige. You see the email address and the websites here at the bottom. And thanks again to both of you for being on today.
Oh,
Thank you, Kristen.
It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye now.